about to see is episode 4 of my podcast, A Psychedelic Point of View. During the recording process, my guest and I were having countless technical difficulties, from being able to hear one another, to the call cutting in and out, to audio delays being anywhere between 5 to 20 seconds, to his Wi-Fi cutting in and out. So please do keep that in mind while going into this episode. I did my absolute best to edit it to the best of my ability, and this is the final result.
Nonetheless, I do hope that you enjoy this episode of A Psychedelic Point of View.
DMT Infinity. He's gonna fucking train your brain.
Shout out to DMT Infinity.
This is a collaboration with DMT Infinity.
DMT Infinity.
DMT Infinity.
DMT Infinity, you crazy motherfucker. This is our local astronaut. DMT Infinity is our local astronaut. You know, right now, NASA has a couple guys in space, and who cares what they're doing, because DMT Infinity is the real astronaut. This boy is steady blasting off, if you know what I'm saying.
DMT Infinity.
DMT Infinity.
DMT Infinity. DMT Infinity.
DMT Infinity.
DMT Infinity. 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 Infinity.
What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the newest installment here on DMT Infinity. This is episode 4 of my podcast, A Psychedelic Point of View, and in this episode, we're having my boy Soma Alchemy. Soma, how are you doing today, man? What is on your mind?
Well, today I just want to talk about how we can utilize nutrition to get more benefits out of psychedelics. I noticed a lot of people in the psychedelic community were focusing on spirituality, but we're not focusing on longevity. And that may seem like it's not relevant to the topic, but it is.
Oh, it certainly is.
When you eat avocados, chaga mushrooms, these ancient foods, you know, these superfoods, these are what the shamans ate. They would take these foods to prepare themselves for the trip they were about to go in. And I found we can get a lot more out of these medicines if we combine nutrition with our ritual.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, in a traditional manner, if you're consuming ayahuasca, you are usually told, or you usually have to undergo a certain diet for a week to a month before you even undergo the actual experience. For the simple fact that whenever you are having the experience, now the brew can actually synergize with you on a much deeper level because of the energy that you have been putting into your body. A lot of people fail to realize that food isn't just something that we need and that tastes good. Food is energy. Food is fuel for the body, and that is one reason why fruits and vegetables are so important for our health. They come naturally from the planet, and they are full of nutrients.
I mean, a lot of these minerals, I mean, what makes a superfood super is the ormus minerals that are concentrated in that food. And I also believe, this is my personal theory, that mushrooms are very high in ormus. All mushrooms are. Chaga mushroom, reishi mushroom, lion's mane. And I think we're tapping into that noble essence every time we eat those types of food or those ancient types of mushrooms. Same thing. We're tapping into that same source.
Absolutely. In fact, that is one reason why so many people, even if they do eat meat, even if they are meat eaters, there are meat eaters that refuse to eat meat from places that torture the animals because they don't want that energy in the food that they're eating. They would rather actually go hunt the animal themselves and just shoot it through the head.
Right. I'm a vegetarian myself, but I would rather refer to myself as more of a qualitarian because, you know, honestly, I would love to try deer meat. I mean, such a spiritual animal, and you're getting that energy when you consume that animal. So I think it's so important to be consuming everything on a higher level, you know, and with intent.
I don't think I would ever be a vegetarian or a vegan, but I can certainly respect people who are, and I can certainly see how that has positively impacted their life. The way that I see it, nature consumes itself. That's just what it does. It's not a good or bad thing. Animals eat other animals. And if you talk to people of high ranks like shamans who eat meat, whenever they're eating meat, they're doing it for that energy. They're not just doing it for food. They're doing it specifically for the energy.
when I go to the doctor, you know, I kind of see a shaman. I see the doctor as a shaman. You know, I know it's not that way anymore, but I think that's how it should be. And I think our health practitioners should be the same people administering these medicines. And I just, you know, I just saw how messed up the health industry is, and you know, I just feel like these things go hand in hand. You know, psychedelics were illegal when I was a teenager, so the thing that I got into was nutrition to hook people into psychedelics. Because while we're waiting for, you know, legalization to happen, we can find other ways to get into that state. And I think, you know, I mean, you can take psychedelics like every now and then, but you know, it's not viable to take them every day, and you have to stay in that state. And I think, you know, I mean, it increases the afterglow that you get from the mushroom if you're eating really well and eating really clean.
In fact, that is one reason why people, whenever they eat psilocybin mushrooms, they'll usually drink it down with lemon juice or orange juice, because those chemicals potentiate the psilocybin.
Right. Lemon tech, yeah.
So where did the name Soma Alchemy come from? How did you come up with your username?
I have a fascination with the Soma. You know, it was that alchemical brew that no one could figure out what was. And I guess my life path is finding Soma. You know, just always looking for Soma. You know, there's so many new plants that are coming out like into the space, like blue lotus, and I tend to think, you know, like we're gonna find Soma by looking for those plants.
Hasn't it been hypothesized that what Soma is either some sort of psychedelic wine or just wine all by itself, but was made in such a way that it created very, very intense effects?
Yeah, culture is spiking wine with different herbs. The Romans loved to do that. The Egyptians were really good at that as well. That was the alchemy of combining alcohol with herbs. The Egyptians really knew a lot about, especially the blue lotus.
Mark Dreams too is a huge fan of blue lotus. Now, I personally have nothing against alcohol, but I don't like the idea of consuming all of these store-bought hard liquors and everything, because there was one point in my life for about a year where a friend of mine and we were making moonshine. And experimenting with moonshine really made me understand that consuming... Oh, wait, did we lose Soma? Oh, hold on.
One eternity later.
Are we back?
Yes, now we are back. What the fuck was I talking about?
One eternity later.
Yeah, so a friend of mine and we used to make moonshine, and experimenting with moonshine really made me understand what alcohol is all about, because whenever it comes to these store-bought alcohols like Top Vodka and all of that, it's a much different experience than drinking pure moonshine, because with moonshine, it felt more like I was high on some really good weed instead of that loopy daisy feeling. And I think that there is potentially some sort of, maybe not spiritual benefit that comes out of it, but something borderline spiritual or something like that if used in that sort of way. Because whenever I consume alcohol and I meditate, I've had some of the most incredible meditations while under the influence of alcohol. But I think that all of these top shelf brands of like whiskey and vodka and all of that, I think that all of the extra stuff they're putting inside of it taints the actual alcohol. And I've also noticed that if I drink like really good natural wine, especially if it has been aged for like 10 plus years, then I get some of the most incredible effects out of it. But how do you feel about alcohol?
There is good quality alcohol. It can be brewed from grapes. That's how the ancient Egyptians did it. It was considered the most alchemical way to make alcohol is through the grape, because the grape contains a noble essence. They believed it contained gold, ormus as well. And when you're drinking wine, you're actually drinking ormus gold, just not in a high concentration.
Yeah, and one of the things that in the beginning alchemists wanted to do was to turn lead into gold. And eventually they found a way to do it. Granted, doing it costs more than the actual gold is worth, but that isn't the point. The point was to prove that it could be done. Alchemy is a very interesting topic. In fact, they have this concept of something called the Philosopher's Stone, which is supposed to be some sort of spiritual manifestation of everything all at once, but it actually exists in three-dimensional space and time. So it looks like matter, it acts like matter, but in some sense it's not matter. It is any and everything simultaneously.
It seems to have one foot in one world and one foot in another. And I think when you take it, you kind of experience that feeling of having one foot in the spirit world and one foot into this world. It's pretty intense. It can actually speed up your synchronicities. Like you'll see 111, 222, 333 on the clock. And it's just crazy. You really have to watch your thoughts. You have to really watch what comes on your mind because, you know, if you think about something negative, it can manifest in your life really fast. And you'd be surprised by how fast that happens.
The funny thing about synchronicity is the fact that synchronicity literally follows me every single day of my life. Whether it be through numbers or things that people are telling me that correspond with something that I was thinking, that there's no reason that they should be telling me this because nobody says this stuff on a daily basis, to maybe I'm thinking something and then I hear a noise in the distance, like at the exact same moment that is somehow compatible. Synchronicity is fascinating. I think what synchronicity is the universe communicating with you. And one way that the universe communicates with you is through numbers. Numbers are the words of the universe, and if you know how to read said numbers, then you'll know what the universe is trying to say. What have been your experiences with synchronicity? When did you start first noticing synchronicity coming into your life, and how has that impacted you as an individual?
Well, I heard Terrence McKenna talking about it, and that's one of those things, you know, if you don't experience it, you don't know it's real. But once you do experience it, you see it everywhere. And that's the other thing is, once it comes across your mind, you can't get it out of your mind. It's kind of a gift and a curse. It really is, because if you're not doing the spiritual work, manifestation can be helpful to people. But it can also be the greatest thing ever, and you get everything you want.
Yeah, it's like if you're not doing the work, then synchronicity just starts mocking you.
Yeah. That everyday psychedelic teacher is kind of always pushing you along your path.
So what was the first psychedelic that you ever consumed, and what was the dose that you took?
I would say the first psychedelic I ever tried was cannabis. Yeah, but it had to be cannabis. I know a lot of people brush off cannabis, but cannabis is a deep hallucinogen for me.
Well, THC is not a psychedelic in the traditional sense, but it does have psychoactive psychoactive properties in its chemical makeup, and you can certainly have THC experiences that are borderline psychedelic, if not psychedelic. And a lot of people don't like to admit that, but it is true.
I've noticed it's more powerful when you eat it.
Yes.
It's a lot more powerful. My first psychedelic experience, I would probably say mushrooms.
And what dose did you take?
The dose I took was 1.5 grams.
Okay, so you didn't have like a full-on trip, but you did experience something.
They're pretty potent. I think with mushrooms, everybody says, you know, you just did 1 gram, but I mean, when you do cyanescence versus Q&As, there's a huge difference, you know. I just feel like they're really inconsistent sometimes. Like you eat 1 gram and have a really light experience, and another time I've actually had this happen to me where I'll eat 1 gram like from the same bag of mushrooms and it's just completely different. And I think that's just what we have in our bodies at that time, our diet, you know, whatever's going on that day, but.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever I first experienced mushrooms, it certainly was it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, but it did exceed my expectations. I've never gotten extremely enlightening effects from psilocybin mushrooms all by themselves, but they've certainly molded me into a much better artist than I've ever been in my entire life. But whenever I consumed pure concentrated psilocybin, that was whenever I had my first quote-unquote spiritual experience on psilocybin. And it was so fucking powerful, so incredible. I underestimated it because I only took one capsule, but it was supposed to be the equivalent of like 6 or 8 dried grams. So that it was pretty insane. And there was one point in the trip where I literally started to see, like, I was looking out of the window and all of the seasons started to pass before my eyes, day and night. Like, I saw everything from day to night, every single day of the year pass before my eyes. And I just had this really, really deep connection with nature. And it was such a therapeutic experience as well, because it was like the psilocybin was both working on me in some more physical realm, but also working on me on a psychological realm. And I think that the fact that psilocybin mushrooms are finally becoming legal in more areas is a great thing, because psilocybin mushrooms can, I guess, be used recreationally, but they're spiritual sacraments. On top of that, they're also therapeutic drugs as well. They help with the therapy process. They can help you in meditation, people who are into spirituality, and self-understanding, learning new things, learning about the universe, and connecting with something on a much deeper level that can't be vocalized, such as quote-unquote God, or your higher states of consciousness, or things like that. So I would like to see a future where all psychedelics, or all plant-based traditional psychedelics, are made legal and accessible to anybody of a responsible age. Have you ever tried DMT?
I have not. I mean, I've tried it in lower doses. I have like a little DMT pen, but the pens are really hard to break through, I've found.
So what would you say...
And the other thing is kind of knowing what you're taking, you know?
What would you say your most profound psychedelic experience was? What psychedelic was it? How was the experience? And what was the dose?
Well, I've never really had like a single-handed like psychedelic experience off of one psychedelic. I've always kind of done an alchemy of different psychedelics. So I've always gone on more than one plant at a time, because I found that if you take too much of one thing, then you get the nausea. So take a little bit of something and a little bit of another thing, you can kind of modulate the experience and get some pretty unique effects. I understand that's a lot different than what most people preach, but I really do believe Blue Lotus is a powerful entheogen, especially when consumed with psilocybin. That's what I've been actually working with quite a bit recently.
Have you ever tried LSA in Morning Glory seeds or Hawaiian Baby Woodrose seeds?
I have not. I've heard a lot about them, and it's really interesting, I have to say, because I've heard that you can go a lot deeper, and you see a lot like more ancient imagery, like Aztec imagery, and I've never done LSD, so I can't really say, and that's another thing I need to try, but yeah, LSD is pretty interesting.
Yeah, and even at the lower doses, you do see those Egyptian patterns and everything that you're saying, because there was one time where I took Hawaiian Baby Woodrose seeds, and I ended up passing out from the nausea. And I had an incredible dream too. But as soon as I woke up, there were like these patterns of sacred geometry, Egyptian-like patterns of sacred geometry, and they were just like flowing all across my room and like zooming in and out of themselves. And I just sat there in just absolute awe, just mesmerized by this before I went for a walk. It was incredible. It is like LSD, but it's a lot more. It's so much cleaner.
Well, it's definitely interesting. Definitely something I need to look into for sure.
Have you ever tried Salvia divinorum?
I have not. I have not. I have done a few dissociative plants, but not salvia. That's the other thing is, you know, I haven't really done a lot of synthetic drugs either. It's kind of been more natural and shamanic kind of fast. I'm not really against that. I mean, I like MDMA. You know, yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with synthetic psychedelics, but I think you go deeper when you use the endogenous molecule versus
absolutely.
synthetic. I think we're tapping into a an older database of information. It's almost like I don't want to like say it's like an AI, but it almost kind of is, you know. Especially with the mushroom, I do feel like the mushroom is like an ancient database we can pull information from our ancestors.
Certainly something like that. Anybody who's ever had the psychedelic experience takes things out of it, but they also leave something up in there. And anybody who has the experience can access that.
Right. I mean, honestly, every time you take the mushroom, you're downloading your consciousness onto the mushroom. It learns from you just as much as you're learning from it. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard of Clint E. He talked about taking like 20 plus, 30 plus dried gram ranges of psilocybin mushrooms.
That is insane. I've never heard of the dude. That's incredible.
He practices true African shamanism. Yeah, amazing. I definitely recommend checking him out. Yeah, he talks about the mushroom being kind of like an AI, kind of like a compendium of knowledge, and that our ancestors built temples inside the mushroom, and we just have to take the mushroom to go there. We can take all kinds of martial arts lessons and different ancient knowledges from our past that would normally be lost, but this is how we retrieve them.
Have you ever tried ayahuasca?
I have not. I have all the ingredients to make it in my house. I just need to brew it up and try it.
I would recommend for your first time. I mean, you can do it however you want to, but from my experiences, I've noticed that I've gotten the most profound experiences while using the Banisteriopsis capivine for the MAOI and using Acacia fuchsia for the DMT.
So you kind of stick to the original plant then?
Oh, absolutely. It's like you were saying. I don't like synthetic psychedelics. The only synthetic psychedelic that I can even vibe with, and I've rarely ever taken it, was LSD, and that is only because it had a profound impact on the 70s and 80s and everything, and it is more based on LSA, which is a natural psychedelic. So because of the impact that it had, I don't mind taking it, but I would rather consume DMT or ayahuasca or psilocybin mushrooms or LSA or ayahuasca, or a Salvinorin A. I just don't, I don't like all of these research chemicals that people are taking, and I think they probably do more harm than good.
Well, right. I mean, they become illegal one day, right? And then they change it by 2 oxygen molecules, and it's a completely new drug, and it's legal again. And a lot of times these things are very, very dangerous. 5-MeO-DIPT, which is a version of ketamine. It's just nasty, I mean, you're better off just doing the original drug, honestly, because they have to alter it so much that it becomes so harmful to your body. That's why it's better to kind of stick with the ancient plants. I mean, I think it's kind of a more on once a year type basis for me with synthetic drugs. I enjoy MDMA like once a year. It's really great for social anxiety. It's actually a life changer for social anxiety. So I mean, I'm not gonna knock synthetic drugs.
Yeah, I mean, even one strong, powerful MDMA experience can give you an incredible therapeutic breakthrough and heal you in ways that most other things can't. And my problem whenever it comes to things like MDMA and everything is the drug ecstasy, because a lot of people fail to realize that yes, MDMA is an ecstasy, but it's usually cut with something like heroin or crack cocaine or meth.
Right. Yeah. Or PMA.
I just found that so fucked up too, man, because it's also kind of like people who are quote unquote selling LSD, but they're really selling you a research chemical like 2CB or 25I, which has the potential to actually end your life. And I think that these people are no better than a murderer for what they're doing, because they're lying to their customers saying, oh yes, this is pure LSD, when in all actuality, it's a fucking research chemical that might kill them.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not always the case. There are a few research chemicals that I'm interested in. It's just you have to do a lot of research when something doesn't have any history of human use. You're kind of just going in, man. So you really have to be careful. You have to research what the molecule does, any interactions. Definitely don't take an MAOI when you do those therapeutic psychedelics, especially MDMA, because that can kill people.
Yeah, a lot of people underestimate that. In fact, you're also not supposed to consume MAOIs with Mitra, because if you do that, then that is a deadly combination.
Yeah, there's so many complications that we have to be aware of when we're taking these substances.
Yeah, and like some people will actually have will actually combine these sort of substances together, and nothing happens to them. So then they go and tell other people, "Oh, I did it." So it'll probably be okay if you do it, and then that person ends up dying because you have all this false information out there, and Google and YouTube are trying to censor this stuff, failing to realize that by censoring this stuff, it'll end up with people dying. They should feel bad for what they're doing. They should stop doing what they're doing, because we need this information out there to literally save people's lives and to keep people educated on these topics.
I think I just lost you for a second there.
Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah.
Your channel is called the Soma Alchemy Podcast. When do you plan on starting your own podcast, and are there any other series that you're going to be making as well?
I'm looking for as soon as January 2020 or 2021, so maybe sooner. Maybe, who knows? I just gotta get enough interesting guests on there. I really want it to be of quality before people get doing something.
Are you thinking of maybe doing any documentaries or any sort of educational videos about shamanism, spirituality, meditation, lucid dreaming, and stuff like that?
Yeah, I want to talk about wild lettuce. I've been really diving deep into wild lettuce. I really want to talk about that. Blue lotus, motherwort. I learned about motherwort from the Mark Dreams channel. Amazing plant.
I was just about to say, you should probably have him on your podcast. You two would certainly be able to go deep as fuck about those substances.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. We tried to talk about something, and something happened. So I don't know. We'll probably work something out. Hopefully, that'd be pretty cool. I feel like herbs are so important. I really think that they're not really looked at as much as the psychedelics are. Especially when they're combined with psilocybin.
Yeah, no, they're certainly not, because whenever people hear of these other substances and they learn that they're not going to have some DMT breakthrough or some 500 microgram LSD experience, they tend to shy away from it because it isn't what they want out of it, failing to realize that if they actually experimented with these substances, it could change their life dramatically in the most positive way.
Right. Well, and the other thing is, you hear about people who can't use cannabis. You hear about people who can't use psilocybin. And I think these are great starter psychedelics, for people. Because, great training wheel psychedelics, as far as I'm concerned, The possibilities are endless. There's thousands of plants to research.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've always told people that have never done psychedelics. Whenever people ask me, so what should I take as my first psychedelic? I always say something like psilocybin mushrooms, because it is an easier psychedelic to take. Not that any psychedelic experience is easy to have, but it is a lot easier on somebody who's never taken a psychedelic versus something like salvia divinorum, where if you've never done psychedelics before and you have a bad trip on salvia, you may actually end up getting PTSD and undergoing extreme trauma that you never come back from.
Right. Yeah, and if you're not set up to handle something like that, don't go in. You gotta have a good setting. You gotta make sure what's inside your mind is right, and what's around you is right, and all the people around you as well, So people don't really think about that. That's your mindset, your surrounding, and I guess also nutrition. That's another big thing for me, because I've tripped with so many people that they just puke every time they do mushrooms, and when you kind of clean the body out, you can take psilocybin and not get nausea. I think that's kind of a sign that we're not doing our work. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. In fact, whenever it comes to ayahuasca, I noticed that whenever I started to eat healthier and also fasting before I consumed the ayahuasca, I would have a much more clean a much deeper, a much more insightful, much more impactful experience. And then I would start having ayahuasca experiences where I literally desired nothing outside of myself. And in those moments, I was able to find myself in a way that I never could have even fathomed before. Ayahuasca helped me to fall in love with my own soul.
See, that's real alchemy right there, you know? Because you can go from anything, you know. Don't think that, you know, you're watching this right now. Don't think that you can't do what we're doing. It's so easy, you know. It's literally so easy. You just have to have heart and passion, you know, and you gotta love what you're doing, you know. And if you're not into this, then don't be into it, you know. But I mean, yeah, you definitely have to do some preparation for sure.
Oh yeah, and psychedelics are not for everybody. Psychedelics are only for people who hear their calling. But even if you don't take psychedelics, it doesn't mean that you can't be a psychedelic person. You can live a psychedelic lifestyle and never have touched psychedelics in your entire life. But a psychedelic community is one of the most positive societies on the face of this planet, because psychedelic society, they don't start wars, they don't rape each other, they don't steal from each other, they don't lie to each other. They are good, honest people. And I think that any society can learn from psychedelic societies.
Yeah, like what you're saying, you know. Yeah, you know, they don't use it as a medicine. They use it as a tool for consciousness. They don't need to heal themselves because they're not living that toxic life. It's beautiful, honestly. And I hope someday that our society will get there. I believe we will. You know, that's why these psychedelics are here, and that's why the establishment is so scared of it. You know, because they know that they're about ready to fall. You know, they're about ready to topple. And this is the grassroots movement that we need to build. We all need to take psychedelics. And we all need to...
In fact, before psychedelics were called psychedelics, they were called consciousness expanding drugs, because that is what they do. I would like to see what would happen if more people on the planet actually invested into a psychedelic lifestyle or actually took psychedelics. I think that if at least more than half of everyone on this planet took psychedelics, or in the very least lived a psychedelic lifestyle, we may potentially be able to slowly create a sort of human paradise. Because we have the money, we have the technology, the tools, the understanding, the minds, the communities to create a sort of human paradise. But we're led by the most ignorant, most unintelligent, most uncaring individuals that don't give a fuck about us. It is the 1% among us, and they are the most materialistic people on the face of this planet. And yet, for some reason, we are allowing them to be our leaders, whenever we could literally be creating a society that is not only healthy for ourselves, but healthy for future generations. Because if we're not thinking of the babies that have yet to be born, then there's something that we're not doing right as human beings, as a species.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, the power that the 1% wields, that's the power of manifestation. They know these techniques. I would be surprised if the elite didn't use rituals and magic and psychedelics, because I mean, in order to manifest success, I mean, you need to be into these types of things. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't doubt that they're into that right now as well.
It wouldn't surprise me either, especially with all of the rumors that I've heard and things that people have said. But all I can do is hypothesize on those areas. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. All it takes is 1% of a species to create dramatic change on a global scale. So if we even had a 1 to 3% population throughout the entire world that was psychedelic based or living a psychedelic lifestyle, we could create dramatic change that would make us go from a species on the brink of extinction to being a species that has the potential to do anything.
Right. We are limitless, you know? Yeah. I mean, not everybody needs to take psychedelics either. You know, there's going to be a mass portion of people that do it, and it's also going to affect the people that don't do it. The people that don't do it don't realize that the effect. Yeah, consciousness is just going to extend like dominoes throughout the earth, man.
Yes, they do. In fact, I've had psychedelic experiences around people who've never taken psychedelics, and what I was saying to them, they told me that what I said to them changed their mind, changed their life, changed the way that they thought about things, simply because of the information that was being downloaded into me and then being externalized through my mouth. Because it was like the psychedelic was speaking through me to them, so they didn't need to have the experience in that moment. And that is one of the greatest impacts of psychedelics.
Yeah, I kind of think the mushroom kind of uses us as an antenna to kind of get its ideas out. You know,
Yes.
we're pretty good. We're pretty good at spreading its ideas. You know, I think that's like that symbiotic relationship that we kind of have with the mushroom. Well, not just the mushroom, but you know, all plants.
Yeah, and I mean, mushrooms are one of the most interesting ones, because I think that there's an argument to be made that it is possible that maybe psilocybin mushrooms were the first psychedelics that human beings ever took. Like, take for example the stoned ape theory coined by Terence McKenna. He had the idea that psilocybin was responsible for the doubling of the human brain size. But I think that even if that isn't true, it is still possible that psilocybin mushrooms were the first psychedelic to be taken by humans. I mean, it just seems the most logical. It isn't like we just first made ayahuasca and then went on to LSD or something. No, we certainly started off with something a lot more simpler, and that something simpler grows out of cow shit. That's probably why they call it holy shit.
India worships the cow, so that makes sense. Yeah.
That's awesome. That makes sense. You know, a lot of people look at cows, and a lot of people, the first thing that comes to their mind is, "Ooh, look, a delicious potential hamburger." I see them, and I'm like, "Hey, psilocybin mushrooms and milk."
Well, I mean, we have like alternatives to these to meat. You know, I don't think meat's like a bad thing. You know, I mean, as long as it's killed ethically. But
absolutely,
I don't know. I went down that path for health reasons. I don't try to push my beliefs on other people, but you know, it does help the earth. You know, it really does. It brings down carbon emissions, because you got to ship that meat all across the world. You know, and if you're eating if you're eating organic and you're eating from your area, especially when you're learning how to pick wild herbs out of your yard, you're saving money. You know, and I've saved hundreds of dollars this year just wild crafting herbs and picking wild foods.
Yes. And I mean, I think that if we are going to eat meat, then we shouldn't be getting meat from these major corporations that are torturing these animals to death, and then we just end up wasting more than half of the actual meat itself. Like, if you're going to have your own farm or something, that's one thing, but we need to stop with the senseless slaughtering of all of these animals, man. It's so sad, especially whenever you actually watch these videos of what goes on behind the scenes. It can make someone not ever want to eat meat again.
Well, yeah, I mean, think about the toxins being released while the animal is stressed out. You know, I don't think it's healthy to be eating things scared out of their mind. I think plants want us to eat them because we spread their seeds. You know, I mean, when you look at animals, you know, they eat the food and they poop it out and they spread the seeds. So you're actually helping the plant. I mean, they evolved with us in it, like, you know, like in a symbiotic relationship.
Oh yeah, I mean, on top of that, plants don't have pain receptors, so I would be more willing to believe that they are more into the idea of being eaten than an animal is.
Well, the other thing is, you know, I mean, when you're eating plants, you know, a lot of plants are psychedelic, you know. So, and I found like a lot of plants, like I don't work with the coca leaf very often, but it's very high on antioxidants. It's higher than cacao or green tea, and I find it really interesting that a drug, an illicit one, it could be the most powerful superfood on the planet, you know. So I mean, I think these plants are like, hey, we're healthy and we get you high. Might as well join in, you know.
Yeah, there is no animal whose meat allows you to contact multidimensional entities in higher spatial manifolds of time and space. One thing that I don't think a lot of people realize about psychedelics like DMT and salvia is that these are literally summoning tools. Whenever you have a DMT trip, you are literally summoning multidimensional entities into your space.
Right. In order to access, you have to invoke, you know. I think people forget that, you know. Even when people take psychedelics, a lot of times people don't put the attention behind it, you know, and you have to really invoke the spirit to kind of meet the spirit. Otherwise, it'll just give you euphoria. I think to go deeper and actually meet the plant spirit, you really have to say, hello, I'm here, you know, rather than just kind of taking a drug. You know, you have to really
you have to communicate with it. That is just like with Mother Ayahuasca, the entity that you meet under the influence of ayahuasca. Mark Dreams 2 says that whenever he has DMT trips, he's actually able to invoke Mother Ayahuasca by simply saying her name. So I think that there is some sort of way that we can actually call these entities to us, whether we're under the influence of another substance or even sober in some situations. Because I had this one LSD experience years and years ago. It was under 600 micrograms of LSD, and this entity, it never presented itself to me, but it was always behind me. But it showed me its wings, and its wings were made of like a golden light, and I felt protected by it. But even to this day, I can still feel the presence of that entity here. I think that because I had that experience, I now have a guardian angel. And I really think that psychedelics are profound tools in that area. And a lot of people who even understand spirits and entities, a lot of people still don't realize that no entity can harm you. No spirit can harm you unless you give it permission. No, an entity can only come into your life with your permission. That includes dark entities.
That's very true. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like as long as you express light in everything you do, and you know, unconditional love. I don't think those entities like that. That's the opposite of what they're looking for. They're looking to leech your energy. You know, they're that succubus type energy. You know, if you're of that higher vibrational state, they're not going to touch you. You know, whenever I go into a deep psychedelic experience, I always try to meditate. I try to meditate like a halo of light around me to protect me from anything like that. And I think that's really important to kind of set your boundaries, because those spirits, they will mess with you. They're triggers. You know, and I really think that if you're not set on the inside and you're not organized, they'll take advantage of that and try to trick you.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, whenever I was a kid, still having an extremely developing brain, I was a very naive child. So whenever I first got into psychedelics, I had to learn the hard way, and thank God I had entities of just absolute positivity and light and bliss that came to me first and taught me that, look, before you go any deeper, you need to understand what you're getting yourself into. This isn't just something to just come and see crazy shit and have a good time. And if you start summoning these other entities to you, they will really fuck up your life if you let them. You cannot just let any entity in like you let me in, because I could have been one of them.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like a example of how our society has killed its children, because you know, like, children are inherently sensitive, and they're always looking for a game to play, you know, and they come across this occult knowledge on the internet, because the internet's available to kids nowadays, you know, and you know, they don't have a guideline system to actually like practice magic or practice rituals, and so when they go into it, they don't believe it, they don't think it's gonna happen. But the spirit doesn't care if you believe it, you know, and you can be letting demonic entities inside of yourself. Yeah, there's definitely some truth to that.
So, what first got you into alchemy?
Ormus. I discovered Ormus. I watched Quantum Kitty's channel. I was watching a video about MDMA, and because I just had a really intense MDMA experience, just changed my life. I've always been really awkward, you know, but MDMA kind of set me in my way a little bit, maybe more articulate with my words, you know. So I wanted to like find somebody else who had that same experience, because I hear people just talking about MDMA in a negative light, and I heard her talking about MDMA just like opening up your emotions and, you know, unlocking your empathic traits. And then she started talking about Ormus, which really fascinated me. I was like, what is Ormus? And so it just brought me down this rabbit hole of information and learning about monoatomic gold and Ormus. Very interesting.
Aside from the obvious, what more can you tell me about the Philosopher's Stone? Like what even made them start coming up with this concept? Because that is one of the most fascinating things about alchemy to me.
I don't practice elemental alchemy or metallic alchemy. I probably will in the future, but I practice spiritual alchemy. I think that's the most powerful form of alchemy, and I think if you're not practicing spiritual alchemy, I don't think you can practice any other kind of alchemy. And that's what the Philosopher's Stone is trying to control the base, all the elements, and manipulate the elements, which, I mean, I don't think is impossible. But
so in other words, the Philosopher's Stone isn't something outside of yourself. It is something that you manifest from within, or something like that.
You know, I think it's related to the Kundalini, that energetic fire that's always inside of you, and you have to learn to tame it. I tend to think that the Philosopher's Stone is inside of you. I agree with you on that, because it's more of an internal thing, and I think maybe that's how they discovered the real Philosopher's Stone. So they actually turned lead to gold. I think, I don't know. I think this technology, it was an alien technology, and in order to interface with it, we had to access our own inner fire. So I think that's all great, but I want to focus on my inner fire first, because that's how I'm going to get there. I think that's what alchemy kind of means to me.
So what is the difference between alchemy and spiritual alchemy?
So alchemy generally is just like turning something that once was something into a higher state, and spiritual alchemy is, so that would be, you know, just like herbalism, you know, like different, we're making tinctures, trying to make that tincture of the highest alchemical level. So like you're trying to purify it, you're trying to make it the highest spiritual essence it can be. And so with spiritual alchemy, the difference is that you're trying to do that with yourself. You're trying to make your being more pure. So yeah.
So in other words, alchemy is something that is done on the outside, and spiritual alchemy is something that is done on the inside. They're just two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. Alchemy is a very interesting subject. You could go down that path for years and never completely see the other side of it. It's amazing. Kind of like psychedelics in that way.
I was just about to say that too. Yes, they are. Oh my god, dude. Yes. Holy fuck. That is awesome, dude. Fuck. That's all. That's awesome. But let's see here. So how do you feel about the pyramids? How do you think those came into being?
Oh man. I don't know, but you know, I think if we take the mushroom, we may be able to ask our ancestors. You know, I think that's the best way to get information. I don't know. It's not something I can really speak on. I know a lot about Egypt, you know, but it's surprising that I cannot speak on that, because that's something that I want to know myself. Actually, I've read about the Great Pyramid possibly being like a generator for monoatomic gold, like for Ormus production. That's quite interesting. I think they were used for more than what we think. I don't think they were just a building or a temple. I think they were a machine or a trans-dimensional technology for travel. Like, I tend to think it's a lot more deeper than what we think. You know, I just feel like the answer is always so much weirder than what we think.
Oh yeah, no, it certainly goes deeper than what we even hypothesize it to be. And this may sound crazy, but I really do think that aliens had something to do with the pyramids. But I don't mean little green people from outer space. I mean multi-dimensional entities from other dimensions. That is what I mean by aliens. And I think that the Egyptians, I think that people back in those times were more in tune with other dimensions. That they were in tune with these places that we experience on psychedelics, and because of that they were able to create things and manifest things outside of themselves that we now see as impossible. So even though that right now in time we are more technologically involved than they are with the computers and phones and vehicles that we have, they were more evolved on a personal level, on a spiritual level, on a species level. And I think that we can learn a lot from that. And if psychedelics can take us back to that and reteach humanity all of those lessons, and people actually start to integrate that into the general society, then we could see an amazing positive impact on our species. And we have lost Soma. No. We don't lost Soma. Alright everybody, so I do hope that you all enjoyed this episode of A Psychedelic Point of View. Unfortunately, we had lost the connection with Soma Alchemy. We were having issues with the connection due to his Wi-Fi, so hopefully we can have Soma Alchemy back on in a future episode of A Psychedelic Point of View, but as for now, we're going to call that an episode. Nonetheless, I do hope that you all enjoyed it, learned something new, and if y'all did, leave it a like, subscribe to DMT Infinity if you haven't already, subscribe to Soma Alchemy if you haven't already, and hit that bell notification button to be notified each and every single time that I upload a brand new video and or do a live stream. And as always, I'm your host DMT Infinity, and I will catch you all in the next one. Peace.